all without fans, isn't it? You play a football match without fans, isn't it? It can be the greatest game in the world. If there are no people there to watch, it becomes nothing.
Into Johnson. Johnson. Larson. Oh, he's in! Henrik Larsson! That is sensational! Nakamura! He has done it! Isn't that just typical?
The game is over. The Rebels have won.
A star is born at Celtic!
Champions. That's who we are.
Gentlemen, ladies, and ladies who want to be gentlemen, and gentlemen who want to be ladies, how are you? Back again, another Tuesday. Myself, Mr. McGinty, and Mr. James. So, listen, we're late to the party. We know what's happening. Big Brendan's back. 3-year deal. Mr. Brendan Rodgers, 3-year deal. So listen, do you know what? It's a great thing because at least we know now what's happening. We know what we're coming into next season. And all the rumours, all the talk is very, very positive in terms of ready to be breaking the bank for transfer signings and whatnot. So I am more than excited. What about you guys?
Aye, worst kept secret in football, I think. So just the same as yourself, mate. Glad to get it done. He wasn't top of my list, but he was nowhere near the bottom either. So I'm more than happy with the appointment. Just let's move on to the transfer window now and get going for next year.
McGinty, I know you're a big lover of the board. I know you like the board, mate. I know you like to say your piece. So the kind of talk is that this has been led by Desmond. And obviously there was the reported signings for Spurs. You know, them basically coming in, taking John Kennedy, taking Gavin Strachan and whatnot. And apparently Desmond's put his foot down, said on your bike, no happening, and the guys are staying. So I think so obviously Brenda's back in on a 3-year deal. Kennedy stays as assistant manager. Gavin Strachan stays with a laptop in place. Harry Kewell stays, which is a big surprise for me. Stevie Wood stays. And of course, Darren O'Day and Steve McManus in the B teams. So at least it's no a full revamp. It's no an entire new backroom team that's coming in. So it's no too much of a change for the players. Obviously, the manager's going to come in. He's going to change his style a wee bit to suit his philosophy, his kind of ideology of football in terms. But I don't think it'll be that much of a transition, if you know what I mean. Obviously, like when we played under Ange, which is now a past experience, it was pressing football. It was kind of all out. It was fucking intensity. But now we Rodgers coming back, and I think it's going to be going back to that kind of possession based again. You happy with that?
Aye-ish. For anybody who doesn't know, we're now on Patreon. We're running a Patreon account. As currently, it's free for all the content, and if anybody's been keeping tabs on it for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been saying all that and then some, and elaborating on it in all the daily updates, talking about the expectations of transitioning from the 4-3-3 of an Ange to what will be probably the 4-2-3-1. And the fact that it is very similar. The biggest change is going to be the third midfielder becomes a number 10 again, and the inverted fullbacks go back out to be more overlapping with the wingers. I've discussed the benefits of that, and I think a couple of players will benefit, such as Bennaby. I think he has a prime opportunity, but he needs to take that opportunity. I think it's a fresh start for everybody. For us as fans with Brendan Rodgers, for the board with Brendan Rodgers as well, for Brendan Rodgers himself, and for the players and everybody. It's just a fresh start. Woodsy, so how do you get on this Patreon thing? Well, patreon.com, I think it is straight up on there. I'll bring it up on the bottom. facebook.com/The Jungle Gyms podcast. So it's down there just now. It's free content just now. We are going to add tiers onto it, which will become subscription based. It's going to be very dependent on what content we actually put out there on a regular basis. Will determine the separate levels and the separate tiers. But we'll get more of that as and when we actually cement what content it is. We're 95% there, but we'll sort that out soon enough. But as far as Rodgers is concerned, to try and bring it back to a shortened answer for you, Paddy, I'm one of these guys who, for the first 2 years at least after Rodgers left, was saying rat. And I couldn't go him and I couldn't bear him. See, since the Lennon's left, that anger and hate has been replaced by Lennon's. So I can only hate one person at a time to that kind of level. So the Rodgers one kind of eased up a wee bit. And when you compare and contrast what Rodgers has done and said since about Celtic, he's not stopped praising us and telling us all how much he not regretted leaving, but how he knew he had unfinished business, that he is a big Celtic fan, that he does wish to come back one day. He's got his wish. And everything pointed to him actually being probably an emotional struggle when he left, but he took the money business option. We can say what we want about that, but comparatively to Lennon, I don't want to make a tit for tat too much about them. What he's done since he's left is bitch and moan and make excuses. It's night and day contrast, and I'll take somebody back like Brendan Rodgers, who's a proven great coach, great manager, great developer of talent, and clearly has an undying love for this club. He may exaggerate quite a few situations and quotes. He might be quite egotistical and all the rest of it. But it's clear as day he's a fantastic coach and a great supporter of this club. So all in all, welcome back, Brendan.
Well, listen, I've been doing quite a lot of thinking as well since obviously the rumours really started to kind of strengthen about him coming back in, and obviously I'm over the whole rat thing. I'm the same again, mate. I was in that camp. It's probably out of spite more than anything, because I was gutted when he left. Really was gutted. But sometimes you just need to be realistic and you need to look over things. Clearly, at the end of his last tenure, like, there was a bit of a consternation there with the board at the time. He was losing out in transfer targets. He wanted to bring in guys like Perrault, Castagna, John McGinn, etc., etc. It didn't happen. You ended up with Marvin Compere, Izagiri for a second spell, guys that weren't good enough and weren't going to elevate the squad. But again, that if you flip that over, some of the signings that he made weren't great. Do you know what I mean? So you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as the manager no getting what he's asking for to make the team even better, and you have got a board who don't trust the manager to be there long term. They don't trust the guy that the manager's brought in, which is named Lee Congerton, to be bringing in good enough players. So there was clearly a bit of a problem there between the two of them. It ended in terms of the relationship because he moved to Leicester. But do you know what? It's gone, because he's back now. And I think even if you have got the opinion that you still don't trust him, you still think he's a rat, this and that, the guy is now the Celtic manager. So if you are a Celtic supporter, you have to get behind him 100%. If you didn't want him in as manager, it doesn't matter. You need to support him. You need to get behind him. You need to get behind the boys, because it's now the Brendan Rodgers Mark II era. You know what I mean? And as I say, James, everything that we're seeing now in the media, which you don't tend to see people in like the Record, the Sun, excuse me for even mentioning their fucking names, but you don't tend to see them actually saying, you know, Celtic's going to go out and they're going to break record transfers, they're going to go and sign this, they're going to go and sign that. It's usually all doom and gloom. And we have not seen that apart from maybe one arsehole of an article, who I won't even get into. But how do you see this one playing out, James? Because the manager isn't walking into a shit show, as what has been the case for many a manager, as far as I can remember. I don't remember a manager walking into the Celtic job with this kind of quality set up, team full of winners, just after the back of a treble win. You know what I mean?
Aye. No, it's definitely exciting times, mate. And see, just to kind of get back and touch on what you were saying in terms of how he left and things like that, for me, I'll explain it, but that makes it a even that wee bit more kind of exciting. That makes me look forward to next season a wee bit more. I said regardless of whether or no fucking Andrew's still here and Rodgers never come back to Celtic in his career again, I think time has and would have continued probably to be kind to Brendan Rodgers. I'll never defend him for leaving when he did. That's one thing I'll never kind of give him any leeway for. He should never have left when he did. But as you say, your Castagna, Panucci, all the rest of them, I mean, he signed half of them when he went to Leicester as well, so they were clearly targets, and we chased them for weeks. Never happened, the whole McGinn thing. And then you had the thing with Marian Shved as well. Mind the interview where he said, basically, I don't know who this guy is, kind of type thing. So, as I say, I'll never forgive him for basically leaving in the middle of the night and leaving his high and dry to go to Tynecastle the next night or a couple of nights later, whatever it was. But through time, especially how it played out with Lennon and during the COVID season and everything, I say we've restructured the board, which to an extent we have. It's the same faces, just in different places. And Brendan Rodgers himself is undeniably got a massive, massive ego. And I don't think Brendan Rodgers' ego would allow him to come back and under any kind of circumstances that would be the same as the way he left, if that makes sense. So I think there's obviously been guarantees made, as you say, about budget, and as McGinty might like to admit as well, that maybe guarantees that Lobel will be keeping his role out it. He'll be sticking to his role in the business side at this time.
I'm just going to bring in that comment there for Colville, our new favourite Geordie boy. How you doing, pal? So he's saying that Rodgers is coming back this time as a far better manager. So I know that he says that Rodgers has got an ego. Do you not think, right, again, taking your bias, fucking tinted glasses off, whatever it may be, whether you like him, whether you don't like him, do you not think that every kind of elite manager has to have an ego? You don't have like the kind of passive-aggressive manager anymore. You need to have these guys that come in with an aura. And undeniably, that's what Brendan Rodgers done the first time. When he first came in the door, he had 20,000 people at Celtic Park to welcome him there. It was as if the guy descended from heaven. You know what I mean? Everybody hung off I certainly did. I hung off every single word the guy says, because I was pure awe of this elite manager that came from England and took us up 2, 3, 4 levels. This is a guy who's now left, right? Who then left, went to England, went to the Leicester team, who at that point had a good reputation. They had won the league, I think, season 2 before. All right, it's no ended up great for him. He's been sacked. They've been relegated. But he does come having won an FA Cup, at least, with Leicester, which is a good feat for them. Do you think he's going to come back as a better manager? Do you think he's going to come back as he's going to come back? He's going to be braver. He's going to be bolder. His ideas are going to be there. Like, as you say, there's clearly got to be some arrangement here whereby both parties have thrashed it out and says, I want to come back as a manager. I want this, I want that, because you're asking me to come back here. So here's my demands. Let's hypothetically say he's demanded 40 million. I want to spend 10 million on a defender, 10 million on a goalie, 10 million on a left back, 10 million on a striker. And Desmond and Lawwell, or whoever it may be, says, right, that's fine. We agree with that because that's what we need. That was already going to be in place to some extent with the new manager. So he was getting it. So you have to kind of be promised that as well. But here's our demands. If you want that, you need to sign a long-term contract. Neither this row and stuff. No, I mean, it's got to be a bit of give and give. And that's something that was probably lacking the last time. So do you think that that's going to be there this time? And I know McGinty's absolutely choking to get his neb in about Lawwell Senior.
There's a few things there I want to touch on, and I don't want to take too much time from you guys because I love listening to you two talk about this kind of stuff. But I think you're 100% right. There has to be a compromise from both sides. This is not Rodgers comes in and throws his weight around and he gets everything he wants, because we can't bend over backwards for any Tom, Dick and Harry manager. And that's not what Rodgers is, but we can't just bend over backwards for these guys and give them everything in the sun and no have some sort of control. Because the last time we did that, by the time we tried to take control back from Rodgers, it all went tits up, and he ripped everything out from the backroom staff and beyond. I think we need to back him properly. I don't think backing Brendan Rodgers at Celtic results in, EPL level money getting spent. I don't think it needs to be £10 million per player, but I think it might be up there for one or two of them. I'm just looking at Timothy Castagne just now. Season 16-17, he moved from Genk to Atalanta for €6.5 million. I want to presume my memory of timeline is a bit rough, but I want to assume that that's around about the time that Rodgers was probably trying to sign him for Celtic at the age of 22, 23. He's also trying to sign John McGinn around about that time for what would have been about $3 million, give or take. And I've defended Lawwell and the board with the John McGinn saga, but at the end of the day, these are not unattainable players for Celtic at those stages. Castagne's unattainable now. He's well out with our reach price-wise. But at that time, that's not unattainable. And we need to back Rodgers with that kind of stuff. For me, he does have an eye for a player at times, especially for developing and nurturing talent. We just can't let Conger in again, and I don't think we will. And I think that's probably getting back to your point about what kind of compromises and structures and stuff. I think there's somewhere in there it's been an agreement that Mr. Peter Lawwell Sr. stays well and truly over that way, and we let Mark Lawwell do his thing. Now, Mark Lawwell, if I get his title right, is head of recruitment, which is a bit of an odd title because he's not a director of football. He's not a sporting director. He's a head of recruitment. But we don't have any of the other two. But we do know from previous regimes under Peter Lawwell that the CEO does take too much of a hand in the footballing matters day to day. And maybe Nicholson's also doing that to some extent. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean this as a compliment. Perhaps we don't understand that role in the Celtic situation. And we're now getting used to the fact that instead of having one director of football, we have two doing two slightly different jobs that plus together gives us a director of football. So maybe Lawwell's had to say, like this is Mark Lawwell's head of first team scouting and recruitment. Yeah, there you go. So maybe the compromise here is that, yeah, we can promise you that Peter's not going to get involved. But Rodgers, you need to accept that you're not bringing Conger in. We've got our backroom team, Kennedy, Strachan, McManus, O'Dea, cool. That's in place. You're getting that. You're not fucking around with it because we're putting together our little structure that involves Mark Lawwell as the head of recruitment, Nicholson as the CEO who's going to get his hands dirty when it comes to doing contracts and signing things off and just get the job done. And between the two of them, they're the guys that Rodgers answers to. And they have the money. They have apparently 30 to 40 million they're going to give Ange. They have an analysis room that we're going to give Ange. They have everything else, Barfield, and all the rest of it. See, as long as they give that to Rodgers and back the guy, Rodgers has to accept that some players are going to come in, but he has to trust that Mark Lawwell knows what he's doing. He's got a track record. But we also need to trust that Rodgers also can spot a player every so often. And if he wants a John McGinn, just go and get a John McGinn. Don't dick around about it. Because if we keep getting what he wants within reason and don't dick him off, he has no reason. He's no reason to leave Celtic anymore. He could be at Celtic for as long as he wants, so long as we keep supporting him. And if we do support him correctly with a proper structure, as we look like we're on the edge of, I think it's going to be a great time for us.
Just a wee shout out there to Daniel McAlpine, all the way from South Africa. You're worried about the Green Brigade trouble for Rodgers. Hail. We will get on to that kind of discussion later on, mate, because I think it's kind of worthy. So I think it's kind of hard not to speak about his last tenure towards the tail end because we all know how successful the first was. Yeah, the first season. Sorry, it was a brilliant transition for Ronnie Dyer's kind of flat football. Ultimately unsuccessful because we lost the semi-final to the Rotten Mob. But towards the tail end of Rodgers' tenure, and it's just a comment that Minty's brought up there as well. Okay, must have been reading my mind, pal. Not that one either. The football went a bit. I know, mate, 3 times. The football went a bit stale. So how do we preempt that? And I think that kind of ties in with yourself, McGinty, about backing the guy, making sure that he's getting the players in, because you do need to change your squad up to a certain degree every season. Do you know what I mean? Like we're going to be getting into the Champions League, straight into the Champions League. We have got the advantage of being able to offer that. Right, it's a massive platform. It's a massive piece of seduction that you can throw out when you're trying to entice players into the club. That's something that Rodgers wasn't able to do, and then we saw what happened with that. We missed out the Champions League, certainly his last year. So we need to be doing that. We need to keep being able to get into the Champions League proper, keep getting that money, keep reinvesting in the club, and we need to have that the people on the board and at the higher echelons that are there and being brave and being bold to say, listen, we need to speculate to accumulate. And we've saw that with Michael Nicholson, as far as I'm concerned. When Ange came in, Ange got what he wanted. I think the only player that he missed out on was the guy, David Souza. Maybe another one, but certainly he was the big name that we missed out on. But other than that, he got everything that he wanted. We were successful with the players that came from Japan. You know, probably that was spearheaded by Kyogo coming in, because if he wasn't successful, would the board have says to Ange, right, well, do you know what? We will give you more money for Maeda, for Hatate, this and that. But that's trust there. That's total trust. So I think the differences between the last time when you had Peter Lawwell, who was the de facto director of football, even though he was CEO, and there was instances where his part was too much and too involved in the terms of transfers. You've now got a guy in place, Michael Nicholson, who is the CEO. He takes to do with the running of the day-to-day, of the day-to-day for Celtic. So he's shown the trust in Ange. So I do not doubt for a second that he will show the trust in Rodgers, because Rodgers they'll have thrashed all this out. They'll have made sure that's an agreement. They'll have made sure that he's gave Mark Lawwell his targets, and he's listened to Mark Lawwell and says, listen, this Mark Lawwell says, this is the guys that we've identified who will make your team better. You know what I mean? There they are. Take your pick.
That's the thing. So I brought this one up from Kovo as well. Mark Law is madly underrated. He knows more of the market than Ange through the City Group. I wouldn't say 100% that is the case. I think the markets we were playing in, Ange probably knows more. But I'm just saying that because he has worked and lived over that side of the world for so long. But Mark Law, part of the City Group, he's got scouting technology, scouting knowledge of all those markets as well. And I think that's where Rodgers needs to trust Mark Lawwell. And I think he will. Mark Lawwell becomes his old Lee Congerton, but with a better connection to the CEO and a better understanding of the club and where we need to go as a club, and not just, throw money at the problems sort of thing. I think Rodgers should be able to trust Mark Lawwell. He's got that pedigree, he's got that reputation, and he will be identifying players that actually make sense for this football club. Whereas when it was Peter doing it, he was trying to do both these jobs that Mark Nicholson's doing and Michael Nicholson and Mark Lawwell. Peter tried to do both jobs, and no offense to Peter, but that may as well be me trying to sign players for all that I knew of. I mean, if you told me you've got a 20-year-old left winger, Ukrainian, and Shved, I'd be like, oh yeah, let's get that guy. And Ukrainians thinking, Shevchenko and all the rest of you, like, yeah, definitely get that done. But Rodgers just turned around and going, who the fuck's this guy? And a classic, Conor McGregor kind of role. We can't do that. But I think if Mark Lawwell turns around and says, look, we know you need a winger. We've identified these three. We firmly believe that this one is unattainable financially. This one could make us a turn, but he's a risk. And then there's a third one for whatever reason. I'm sure if we laid it out to him and told him that we're taking the slightly risky one, but he will fit your thing, he will trust Mark Lawwell more than you would trust Peter, because Mark has the reputation and the knowledge and the experience of this. Peter never did. He never had a clue at the end of the day. He was signing Bile and Shved for this guy, not got a clue when he's, Roger was screaming out for John McGinn and Timothy Castagna. We're a mockery at that season. And as somebody else mentioned, do we trust him going into a third season because it kind of goes stale? Yeah, it did. But then it would have went stale for anybody if you were giving them loan deals and not signing the players that he wanted. If we keep backing him, it probably won't go stale. As you said as well, Paddy, you need to reinvent the squad every year or every 2 years at least. You need to reinvent it. You need to reinvest in it, and if you let Rodgers do it, he will provide us dominance in Scottish football, no questions asked. And to the point of where do we go and what's going to be successful for Rodgers and what is he here for? It has to be Europe, because he's already accomplished Scottish football. He's completed it, mate. He needs to be here for Europe, so he doesn't sign for Celtic for 3 years if he's not being made promises that he's getting a chunk of money and proper backing from the club and the board, and that freedom to do what he needs to do at the same time. He needs it's all balancing act that they need to sort out between themselves, but he's not signed back up to us if he's not got assurances and he's not confident in it. And I think he is. I think he is confident, and I think he will do well in Europe. Sorry, I'm going on my tangents, I know. I remember somebody posting this in one of the was it in the WhatsApp group or was it on the message boards? If you remember the Champions League group stages that we had, they were brutal. You had your PSGs, Man Cities, Bayerns, Barcelonas, Anderlechts and Gladbach. They were absolutely brutal groups. And we didn't do that terrible. I like the style of football under Andrew a lot better, but give us a fair crack at a fair group. And I think Rodgers has the experience now under Leicester as well to be able to go to European competitions and actually get a result. So, yeah, I'm confident. I'm excited.
And there's another good comment, James Picordo. Rodgers did say that he was going to be taking a year off. He was going to take a year off. And all of a sudden, another opportunity has arisen. One that he's clearly found interesting. He's found that he's wanted at Celtic. Because obviously, when you do get sacked for a club, I think that's kind of the ultimate display of saying, yeah, you're not wanted here. So when you're kind of approached by Desmond, Lowell, whoever it might be, I'm assuming it's probably just been Desmond himself, says, listen, we want you back here. We want you to be the guy at the helm. How massive do you think that is for a manager with the let's say the ego the size of Rodgers to be wanted?
That's it, mate. That is it. I don't want to put it kind of negatively, but like they'll stroke each other's egos. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's a family show. Keep it clean.
Make Rodgers feel wanted, accept some of his demands, and as you say, I think Conger's actually in Italy now, so he probably wouldn't have come in anyway. But make it clear that Mark Lowell's here. Peter Lowell's kind of...
What's he doing, mate? Is he fucking working on a gondola or something? Because he's
fucking making coffees or something, I don't know. Nah, but I must admit that I said it as well last week. I know we kind of spoke about Rodgers last week. It was kind of a done deal pretty much. But that is the big red flag for me. I mean, everything McGinty said they're spot on, but was it last week? I can't remember if it was last week or this week. I actually looked through his transfers for Liverpool onwards. Liverpool and obviously Celtic and then Leicester. I swear to God, you could probably count in one hand the amount of good signings he's made, and that includes his kind of first season here. Obviously, with Doris De Vries, Scott Sinclair's obviously the kind of outlier. So do I trust him with that money as much as that I'm glad that he's back? I don't fully, and I think if anybody said that they absolutely did, they'd probably be kidding themselves on a wee bit, because his track record just doesn't support that. So strangely enough, this time around, if he's getting the money that we're assuming he's going to spend, hopefully, as I say, it's the same faces just in different places, plus Lowell Jr. Hopefully they will kind of take the reins, so to speak, but obviously leave the final say up to the managers as it has to be, but take the reins a wee bit more and kind of take it from there, because I know, as we said, it went kind of sour at the end, with the way it ended, but his first couple of seasons we had a few howlers in there as well, so let's not get too carried away in terms of like transfers and stuff. The big thing for me with Rodgers, and I said it last week as well, is the players that are already here, they'll go up another level or two. Most of his success he had at Celtic the first time round came with Ronnie Dyer's team. I mean, we've seen what he done with the likes of Stuart Armstrong, Ryan Christie's a prime example. Ryan Christie under Rodgers would probably be one of the first names in the team sheet, and then look at how much he regressed under Lennon to the point he was fucking hitting balls in that window for Parkhead. But I I'm glad that he's back. I think maybe even Corvo will be able to tell us a wee bit more. I'm not going to kid on fucking sat and watched every Leicester game. But the one kind of gripe that everybody had with him was Europe. We'd go into Europe and try and play Barcelona, PSG, the same way we'd play St Mirren or Hamilton Accies or whatever at the weekend. I've seen Leicester a couple of times this season. As I say, it could just be due to injuries or other circumstances. But he was changing the formation. It was maybe 4 at the back, 3 at the back, 5 at the back, which is something that he didn't really do a lot at Celtic. It was pretty much plan B was try plan A with different players. And obviously he's went down to Leicester. 2 top 5 finishes is brilliant for them. FA Cup and then the Charity Shield or Community Shield, whatever it's called these days. So I know, again, it went tits up at the end, but I think kind of COVID and stuff like that had a big impact on their transfers and their finances. Probably still too good a team to get relegated. And I know, obviously, he's kind of jumped ship before they got relegated. But I am excited. But my one, if I had one concern, not even a concern, but just a wee bit wary, it would be with his transfers, just purely because his transfer record previously, it's no great.
Right, well, that's good. That you kind of touched upon something that I wanted to kind of bring up to the group, discuss it. So we can sit here and we can kind of regurgitate everything that happens in the news, or we can sit and we can analyse things. So let's try and break this down. McGinty, I'll ask you first. What do we see about the positives of Brendan Rodgers coming in? James, I think you kind of spoke about that a wee bit yourself there. What do we think that he can actually bring to this club at this time? Take away his last spell, right? That's in the past. Obviously, can give us a kind of indicator of the man being a manager in Scotland. But again, it was a different time. It was a different, a different kind of Sevco team he was up against, this and that. But how do we think that he can come in and make this team better today in this present moment?
I think he does kind of 2 different things here. I think this is not a slight on Ange. I absolutely love watching Ange's football, and I'm a bit sad that the football's maybe going to go back to possession-based football for the sake of possession. But I think Brendan brings in a simpler structure that new players can get on board with a lot quicker. I think he brings in simple instructions. He's very particular with his 3 midfielders, 2 hold and kind of sitting in 1 as a number 10. I think he's very simple and he's wide players doing what wide players need to do. I think it will benefit a lot of the players to simplify the style a little bit. What I hope he does instead of just what he done the last time is to keep the intensity there. I hope he learns from even Ange and what he's done and learns from his last time. He needs to keep that intensity a bit higher. But I think he simplifies things a little bit, makes the setup a little bit less complicated, which is no slight on Ange, because once everybody got on board with Ange, it was beautiful to see and full flow. But I think it simplifies it for a lot of players. It'll make it easier for players to get into the side and be able to do what they need to do. I think the second and the most important thing is, because if we assume, taking the players that he's got just now, pretend he's not going to get any money to throw at it, he will. But he can develop talent so well. I think you look at guys like Bernaby, who will get a simplified role on the left back and he'll be able to build his confidence and become a player. You look at guys like Abada, which I know I've got a little love affair for him, and use guys maybe less so. But his numbers are there for everybody to see. We've seen him also play through the middle before, and he does that reasonably okay. And I think you might see Abada flourish under Brendan Rodgers, who will just take his raw natural talent and kind of fine-tune it. And if anything, maybe develop him more into that third striker. So we might not need to buy a third striker, because Abada is able to do that as well. But I think you see more of the development of the young talent. I dare say you might even see a Mikey Johnson coming back and actually getting a fair crack. Now, I know what we all say about Mikey Johnson, 24 now. How many last chance saloons does he really need? But he seems to have been coming back from his loan spell injury-free now. And if he can get a running team in the team with a manager who actually wants to coach you and develop you and nurture the talent, I think there's a talent there to come out of Mikey Johnson, as opposed to the Neil Lennon attitude when a young lad at the age of 21 tries to, play through an injury on the pitch to try and give his all for the cause, goes up to the manager, says, sorry, I've done a double injury and I have to come off. I'm really sorry. And Lennon's attitude is, fuck off. I think that's extremely poor. And that must have been devastating and crushing for a guy like Mikey Johnson, who's just trying to give his all. Brendan Rodgers nurtures that talent. And I think he nurtures the talent of the badder. Bernaby, Stephen Welsh might even come on to a decent game, but your midfielders, I even think he can bring on Matt O'Reilly. Play him in a more natural number 10. I think Matt O'Reilly becomes the player that we saw in the first 6 months. I think that's what Rodgers will bring, because the core of this squad is fantastic if we can keep them all. Throw in 4 or 5 players at the kind of £6-7 million mark, and we are a Champions League ready team. Rodgers' style has massively evolved since he's been down here, and he focused a lot on the youth system that played in the FA Cup. Yeah, and that's what I want to see. I want to see some of the youth players come through. Look at Rocco Vata. Do we need a right winger? Yes. But with Rodgers at the club, do we really need a right winger? Maybe no. Because Abada, for me, can be your starting right winger, and Rocco Vata is a talent that can come on. How you doing, Rebel?
Well, one of the comments that Rodgers did make the last time when he was appointed, he said that he should not have to go and sign a £10 million player. If he wants a £10 million player, he should be looking straight to his academy and getting them for there. And I think I don't think that he necessarily fulfilled on that kind of ideology or that promise, if you want to call it that. But that's certainly something that needs to be looked at. We need to be looking at the guys like Vata, Summers, even Lawal, and bringing people in.
Sorry to nip in there.
On you go.
See, even with that though, that for me, that's just saying something for the sake of saying it. That has never been the case. And see, was it the last game at Ibrox, or was it the semi-final or a final? There was a game, I can't remember what it was, but we discussed it on here, and somebody must have been injured, and we said, would we play Rocco Vata? And every single one of us said no, we wouldn't trust him yet. So see that notion of saying my next £10 million player should be in the academy, 1,000,000% right. It sounds fucking brilliant in theory. See if we played a Champions League group stage game in 2 or 3 months' time and we went into it and Rocco Vata was on the wing because somebody was injured, we'd all have question marks over it. And that's no saying that Rocco Vata is a bad player, but it's just, like, I get the notion and I know that it takes time in that, but it's no going to kind of hat him overnight. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've had the discussion fucking ad nauseum on here. Fucking fucking about the B team and the Lowland League and all that. So Rodgers coming in, he'll make players better, but I don't think it's going to. Vata and Summers obviously are the two standouts, but I don't think it's going to be a case of we're going to have this fucking new hustling, bustling youth team chatting on the first team's door to come in. I think that might be a kind of Clyde Tunnel, Danny McGrain quote.
No, I mean, I don't know.
I agree.
If you look at what he done, though, sorry, McGinn, look at the players that he has kind of bled through. You look at Liverpool, it was Sterling. You look at Leicester, I think you look at guys maybe like, what's his name? Luke Thomas, the left back.
There was a few at Leicester, to be fair. There was a few, but I'm just basing that off his time here. And as I say, these teams have got 21s teams. I don't know what the situation is, but they're only playing in the fucking Scotland Lowland League against Open Goal. Do you know what I mean? Playing against a podcast team. So for me, and that's not even Rodgers' fault. That's obviously absolutely nothing to do with Rodgers. But as I say, we've discussed it on here before. The youth team for me, we've got Scotland has got a lot of work today in terms of youth football.
Exactly, James. That's exactly what my point is going to be. This isn't a Rodgers thing. Rodgers can help it, but it's a Scottish football thing. The youth development in Scottish football is atrocious. That we don't have proper youth league setups and reserve setups and all the rest of it means that, yes, our under 17s can do really well and the under 15s and whatnot can do really well in their tournaments, but there's no bridge between the 17, 18-year-olds and being ready at the kind of 21, 22, 23 age. There's a 3, 4, 5 year gap where we don't know what to do with the talent. We can't develop them any further because they're just not ready for competitive football at this level. They just aren't. No player is. But we're not doing anything in this country to help that situation. And at some point, Celtic need to realise this and stop waiting for Scotland and the SFA to pull their finger out and do something about it. And we need to do something for ourselves. What that is, I don't know. That is quite literally on the head of Nicholson and Mark Lawwell. They need to go figure that out, because between those two, they need to support that hot air statement of, I should be looking at my youth team for a £10 million player, because there's not a £10 million in there if we can't develop that youth team into £10 million players. We can all say there's a great talent in Summers and Vata, and there is. Vata looks like he probably could break out next season. But if he doesn't break out next season, he needs somewhere to showcase that talent. He needs somewhere to keep developing, because if he's not ready next season, on the bench or sitting in the stands is not going to make him ready the season after. And I think that's where a guy like Mikey Johnson's probably lost his way, along with injuries and all the rest of it. Anytime he's tried to come back, he's been sitting on the bench, he's got little bits of minutes here and there, and he's really not had a chance to develop and grow as a player, because there's nothing for him to do apart from wait for that time where you get injuries and you get thrown in. And it is a once in a generation that you do that and you get a Kieran Tierney come out of it. The rest of the times, it's everybody else that goes to the wayside. We need to do something different in Scotland. And if we're not going to, Celtic need to do something different for themselves. I don't know what that is. Maybe that is literally sending them out to play in youth competitions across Europe and across the world. Set up our own mini league setup, not unofficial league setup, where we just basically say, here's 30 games for the next, I don't know, however months, 7, 8 months, and just send them across the world playing football and developing talents, playing against Boca Juniors youth team, playing against Barcelona's youth. I don't care who it is, just out you go and play football, because they need to play football at a decent level to be able to come back and say, aye, we've learnt something. And that's a structure that needs to be sorted within the club. That needs to be sorted by the club, and that's not a Brendan Rodgers thing. He wants to be able to lean on that, but it's not a Brendan Rodgers thing to sort.
Right, so assuming then that that's kind of like a long-term vision, a long-term plan, it's going to be here for 3 years, right? So move on for that then, right? And the short term, I think with Rodgers coming in at the time that he's coming in, at the tail end of the season, tail end of a treble winning team, coming at the Champions League, I think one of Rodgers' biggest positives is the fact that he can get a tune out of a player straight away. He can come in, he can use that ego, he can use he's very well versed, let's be honest. He talks a good game. And I think a lot of players will respond to that straight away. He'll come in and he'll tell them exactly what he's wanting. He'll tell them exactly what he wants to see for that player. And I think that the players will respect him enough to say, listen, I've got an opportunity here. This is a new dawn, it's a new era. Let's get to work. As the new adage says, it's went for we never stop till let's get to work. But I'm now thinking, I'm now looking at guys who for me should have been out the door. But that's because they didn't necessarily relate transition into Angie's kind of style of football. Guys like David Turnbull. David Turnbull hardly got a sniff in Angie's team because he's no mobile enough. And there's a guy who loves David Turnbull, I think, Kev. But I feel midfielders are then going to be more aligned to being kind of possession-based. I think Turnbull might just have a future here. Because let's be honest, he's good in the ball. He's got a good range of passing. He's got this and that. It's just getting that extra level at him, that extra kind of wow factor, because there is a good player there. Let's be honest. Tom Rogic as well. When Tom Rogic was here, Tom Rogic was never ever a mobile player as such, but the guy was a wizard with the ball at his feet. And look at how much that Tom Rogic kind of stood up and was elevated in that team. You just need to look at the treble winning goal in the Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen, last few minutes of the game. Unbelievable. They memories stick in your mind at all times. You'll never ever forget them. So players like David Turnbull surely should be saying, right, this is me, this is my opportunity. I can now reinforce myself back into the team if I want to be here. And I think as well, guys like Johnston, Alistair Johnston, I should say, I think he might just flourish under Rodgers because I'm assuming that the inverted fullback is going to be non-existent anymore, which might then kind of be quite disingenuous on Greg Taylor because he's now going to be kind of losing that extra, I don't know, what's the right kind of term for it, that extra thing that he brought to the team by being able to slot in the midfield. I think we're going to be looking now at essentially back to kind of attacking fullbacks. But is there anybody in the team that you think could almost reinvent herself under Rodgers, or is there anybody there that you think can go to the next level?
The Turnbull, the literally three you've mentioned just stick out for me: Turnbull, O'Reilly, and Abada. I think Abada could be massive for us next season. Not 1-0, so I'll see that in about 10 minutes. It's still fucking sunny on this daily. I think that'll be massive. I think Abada could be massive next year. What I will be interested to see, there's two that I think it could potentially go the other way is Greg Taylor. And I always say that because Greg Taylor was just absolutely fantastic at playing that kind of inverted fullback role. So if that is going to be abandoned, he pretty much will need to reinvent himself. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And the other one's Maeda. It'll be interesting to see even if he gets a game under Rodgers, to be honest with you, because it doesn't really strike me as a Rodgers type player. Obviously, Ange signed him. Ange knew how to kind of get the best out of him, and even on his best day, maybe kind of split opinion. So it will be interesting to see with they two moving forward for me.
McGinty, a name I want to ask you about, and it kind of ties in with the last player that James mentioned there. So Maeda's been, I don't want to say shoehorned into the team under Ange, but for me, he's been brought in possibly kind of, what's the kind of term I'm looking for here? So basically, he's been coming in and he's been playing on the left hand side. Jota's been shifted over to the right. I think now, if Rodgers wants to come in, and you look back to the likes of Scott Sinclair, right, and how kind of important he was in Rodgers' first season, I've been looking to see Jota being moved back to the left and just saying, listen, stay there, do what you do best, get the ball, cut inside, make the magic happen. And I think that's a player who Rodgers will be coming in and looking at straight away and saying, listen, I can really, really work with this guy. But we need to say to him, look, you're going to be there. You're going to be the inside forward, the left-hand side. Maeda, you could probably use him somewhere else to a certain degree, but I think we need to look at the guys who can be the big names for us, the more important guys. And I think we really need to nail Jota down and say, listen, that's where you're playing. None of this cutting back and forward, unless needs be. But I think we need to utilise him more on the left, and that could potentially be a guy who, stands out for him, for Rodgers.
So I reckon Maeda is one of the first names on the list to be potentially shown the door. I think he's one of the players who we could get a couple of million for, maybe make a profit on him, sure, but he can leave and he wouldn't be quite a miss under Brendan Rodgers' team, because exactly what you said, Jota on the side. Jota is an upgrade on Scotty Sinclair, and Scotty Sinclair was a fantastic player for us, but he basically does the Scotty Sinclair role on the left. He's Brendan Rodgers' wet dream, is having Jota on the left side. For me, I think Rodgers would be an absolute mental to not put him back on the left side properly, which means that Maeda doesn't really have a place. I think Rodgers also gets really excited by Abada on the right. I think Abada's got more than enough talent in him to hold down that position, and now is the season that he really has to. I know people aren't going to like this idea of having Mikey Johnson on the left and Rocco Vata on the right as your backups to these two, because the depth and quality isn't quite there unless both of them suddenly spark it up at the start of the season, which is unlikely. So we probably do need extra depth and cover. I don't think Maeda fits that for Brendan Rodgers. I think he could easily be shown the door. But then I need to go back to what I've said this season. Maeda's not a winger. Maeda was the top goal scorer in the J-League at the same time that Kyogo was also the top scorer in the J-League when Kyogo was at Celtic. That's how good both of them were. Maeda is a striker, and his most dangerous times for Celtic happened to be when he actually drifted into the middle. He's got a natural instinct for goal at times. He's unconventional in how he moves off the ball at times, but he's got a knack of being in the right place when it comes to playing through the middle. I know I said earlier that Abada could be developed by Rodgers to be that third option of a striker, but you've also quite naturally got the third striker there in Maeda if you really need it. I think he could be gone. I think he won't be a big miss, but I think this Maeda, if we did, is not on the left wing though, not under Brendan Rodgers. I just don't see that at all.
See, I would agree with that, but I would add on to that. I don't see Maeda making it as a striker for Celtic anyway, because I know he was good at the World Cup and everything, but obviously playing for Japan, he's going to have space to run into and behind. Nobody's going to play 10 men behind the ball when they're playing against Japan, well, for the most part anyway. So he's got that space to work in, and obviously can use his pace to get in behind. He's not going to get that here, playing through the middle. So I don't know. I think I wouldn't like to see him go, because I do think he's definitely got his uses, but I think he could potentially be one of the ones, as you say, at the top of the list to maybe be shown the door.
Again, it's you need to look at the way that Rodgers is probably going to set up, and I know that Rodgers has got a bit more kind of leeway in terms of his formation. Ange was very, very rigid. He told us, I don't have a plan B. My only plan is to do plan A better. Excuse me. So clearly I wasn't going to go with two strikers or anything. If Maeda's going to play as a forward, then he needs to go in ahead of... If you're assuming it's going to be a one-man up top formation, he's going to need to go in ahead of Kyogo. He's going to need to go ahead of O, assuming they're still going to be here. He's going to need to be ahead of Abada as well, who's played as a striker when needs be. But I don't think we should. I don't think we should maybe write him off yet as such, because he is a worker. He tries. He's got his uses. He's rapid. He can be kind of brought on to kind of attack defenders when they're tiring. With some being utilised in a sense where he pegs back Tavernier, doesn't allow him to come forward. So that's the kind of uses as well. But everybody's going to have a blank slate now, unless Rodgers comes in with the envelopes with the name written on them and say, listen, there's 3 names here, and you're going to leave the club unless you fucking change my mind, which I don't imagine he will. I think everybody will have a chance to walk back to pre-season training and show their worth, show how they can transform into Rodgers' formations, into his positional sense, whatever it may be. But so you guys are kind of writing off Maeda, is that right?
Under Rodgers, I think.
Aye, in a short answer, aye.
Right, so let's just try and condense this quickly then, right? Because obviously we could sit here and we could talk all night about who we want to stay, who we want to keep. So I'm just going to run through the team very, very quickly. And I want quick yes or no, and if you want to give a wee quick reason why. Right, so Joe Hart and goals.
One more year.
Back up.
1 more year. Do you think we need to sign another goalkeeper? As either back Hart or somebody to push Hart?
Push Hart. I think it needs to be a clean slate for everybody in the goalkeeper situation. Sorry about the noise in the background, guys. James, do you want to take off?
I'd like a new number 1. If I'm being totally honest, being totally kind of ruthless, I'd like a new number 1. I'd keep Hart. I'd keep him as backup, but I'd like a new number 1.
And same to the guys in the comments as well, by the way. If you want to fling in answers, I'll bring them up while we're talking about them. I'll go with that as well. Right, Greg Taylor.
Greg Taylor's an interesting one. I definitely keep him. Again, it's maybe another one. Thinking of Europe, it's probably really harsh, and it probably is just because his name's Greg Taylor, but I'd probably like an upgrade on him as well.
Bernabei?
Nah.
Sorry, Paddy, to jump it. Can I go back to the Hart thing, the goalkeeper thing, just very, very quickly? I think we keep Hart for one more year. I'd keep Hart for actually longer than one more year, but I think he's got one more good year that he actually could be first choice for us. But I think we need to get rid of Seacrest and Bain. And we need to look seriously at Hazard, Duhan, and Toby and see which one's actually worth trying to nurture through. And we need to keep Hart as a steady, good, competent number one and fix the stuff behind him. A backup needs to push him and want to take over from him and be better, could be better than him. I don't think Seacrest or Bain is that person. And the young goalkeeper needs to be the next one waiting sort of thing. As far as Greg Taylor considered the left back with Bernabei, I think we go with who's there with the two of them, and we see if Greg Taylor can reinvent himself, and we see if, and we see if Bernabei can actually step up in the new formation and the new style. I think there's players there. I wouldn't rush out to get a left back. I would see what happens with these two first.
Do you know? I'm kind of inclined to think that way as well, right? I was of the opinion that Bernabei is not good enough. But again, it's a new regime, it's a new, fresh approach. Maybe the new guy can come in and identify where Bernabei can be better, where he can be utilised. Again, I definitely think that the inverted fullback is gone. There might be some kind of points where we possibly use it, but I think he'll go back to the way that he works. Inverted fullbacks is Angie's play. Ange isn't here. He's at Spurs. So that's fucking gone. That time's over. It's now back to Rodgers. So there could be potential there in Bernabei. I mean, we clearly bought him because we saw something, because the scouting department saw it. Ange has obviously signed off on it and said there could be a player here. We know that players don't always work out. But let's not write him off just yet. Let's see what Rodgers can do with him, because he could be the answer to the left back. The upgrade, if you want to call it, for Greg Taylor.
Never mind. It's only been here one season. And you know what it's like for these young players. When he's 2021 when he came over from Argentina, first time out the country and all that. Sometimes they need that time.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay, centre back. There's our Gavin, unavailable tonight through illness. Hope you're feeling better, buddy. Need a centre back to give some meaningful competition. Need a right winger to allow Jota to play on his favoured left. Yes, Maida is a square peg and a round hole. So, centre back position. I'm assuming that we're going to be in total agreement here that Carter Vickers is the main man, aye? Right, okay. So, Starfelt, Kobayashi, who else? Starfelt, Kobayashi, and Stephen Welsh.
I would keep Starfelt, but look for an upgrade to walk into the first team. Kobayashi and Welsh. I'd probably keep Kobayashi for backup. Welsh will probably be away.
Agreed, fully. But exactly that, James.
That's good then. That's nice and quick because we can move on then. Right back area. So I am more than happy and hoping that Alistair Johnson is the number one right back. So Anthony Ralston.
I would
back up.
Nah,
solid.
I would disagree this time. I'd probably look to get even a better backup than Ralston. I feel as if he had a purple patch, but he's no been as good as he was the last wee while.
Yeah, there's a good point there for Paul Patrick as well. Could Liam Scales challenge for a place in the defence when he comes back from loan?
No.
Why not?
I mean, no disrespect. I just didn't see it in him to be able to be better than Starfelt or Carter Vickers. And as James says, we'll keep Starfelt. I think the Starfelt-Carter Vickers partnership works very, very well. But we need somebody to challenge Starfelt and push either Starfelt on or be better than Starfelt, and Liam Scales is not that player. Liam Scales takes the place of Stephen Welsh.
Could he be an option at left back though?
Doubtful.
I'm just going to assume, right? You know, we know that Scales wasn't identified by Postecoglou or anything. You could probably put your bets on it that it was a Desmond signing because he came for Shamrock Rovers. Desmond's got the shares in Shamrock Rovers. a left-footed centre back is hard to find. So do you not think that we should maybe just say, listen, come back and have another wee shot? Because Scales was another one of the players who hadn't played a lot of full-time football before he came to Celtic. I think he only had like a year's full season as a professional football player. Same as Hatate, they played for the university teams. So really, even though he's 24, I think the same as Hatate, he came at the same time, and the two of them were kind of probably maybe at the same kind of level of experience in terms of the amount of game time played. He's went to Aberdeen. He's seen the good and bad this season. He's obviously scored an absolute worldie that he meant against the Rotten Mob not too long ago. So there's something that could be utilised. He's got height. He's about 6'2", I think. He's decent. He's fast. He's strong. He's left-footed. So I think it could be useful. Potentially.
I'm just so blinkered in terms of Europe now. I think we're going for Europe. So see guys like Liam Scales, Mikey Johnson, fucking Johnny Kenny, all these kind of guys. I think their time here's finished. Ralston as well is probably included in that.
Right, okay. Midfield, do you think that he'll stick with the nucleus in the midfield? So I think Callum McGregor is obviously a stick on. It's where he plays McGregor. I think it could be done with turning McGregor into the type of player that he turned Scott Brown into at the start. So obviously Scott Brown, again, I don't want to hark back too much to his last tenure, but Scott Brown was the tough tackling midfielder. He was the guy that played a wee bit further up. He was kind of here, there, and everywhere. Same as what McGregor is, right? But when Brendan Rodgers took over, he turned Brown into a deeper player. He says, listen, you've got the ability to be technical. You've got the technical ability there where you can pass the ball, you can retain the ball, you can do this and you can do that. And Scott Brown at one point had the best passing stats in the Champions League, right? Better than anybody. And you're talking top midfielders. So I reckon he could do the exact same with Callum McGregor. He could give longevity to his career by saying, listen, you don't need to be that guy who's the box-to-box midfielder. I've got more energetic, younger players there. You be the guy that sits back and be my metronome in this team. You can dictate the play because you've got that range of passing. You can go short, you can go long, you can go sideways, you can go forward. And that's what you want in possession-based football. So I think that's probably the only kind of talking point about McGregor, because he's the captain. I don't see that changing. And I don't see him being dropped or sold at any point. So how do you think we're going to get the best out of Callum McGregor? And I'll let you two talk about that while I go and sprinkle the tinkle.
With Callum McGregor, I still maintain that he plays his best football going forward. It's not to say he's bad going backwards at all, of course, isn't he? But what Paddy's saying there, when Rodgers came in the first time with Scott Brown, would I be right in saying that was when Scott Brown had all the problems with like his hip and stuff like that? And it was kind of touch and go. He was talking, I think he was kind of contemplating retiring. He said himself, and Brendan Rodgers met him or invited him to his house or something like that and had a kind of meeting with him.
There's something about that time like that, because I'm sure he, under the Dialer reign, he was really starting to look like he just didn't have the fitness, he didn't have the legs for it anymore. And it was like, Christ, put him out to pastures new sort of thing. And he got a new lease of life under Brendan Rodgers in that first season. And I think there's something in what Paddy's saying, and I keep thinking of Pirlo whenever he talks about it in this way, that you can just see McGregor started as a kind of attacking midfield and just slowly but surely pulling back, but he never changes his style. He's always wanting to play forward. He always wants to dictate the tempo and stuff. And I think McGregor, obviously not the same talent as Pirlo, but I think he can play that role, and he probably will become now deeper, especially when you look at what Rodgers likes to do with the 6 and the 8 almost playing in tandem with each other, and then the 10 being slightly in front. And I think you look at, I'm going to move on to Hatate at this point now, but I think you look at McGregor and Hatate being those two midfielders, and I don't think they change, and I don't think we can sign anybody who replaces them in the sense of European football. I think they are European level. It's about getting the two who are back up to them being of a similar level to be able to slot in when they have to. So the big question is not do you replace McGregor and Hatate, is who's actually the backup to these two.
See, to be honest, just
Go
after
back,
what
Adam.
you've said, I would, and I know we're going to say it again, the big one Yama type, but I still, and I think it is 100% more likely under Rodgers. I know we've kind of linked with Ndidi and Amati and all that. I think that's just lazy journalism, but I forgot about him as well. But I'd still like us to see, sign that kind of type of midfielder, more obviously thinking towards Europe and things like that.
Well, see the reason why I obviously missed what you were talking about there about McGregor, but the reason why I posed that question is because under Ange, McGregor's basically playing 3 roles. I like to think it right. So he's playing that guy that sits deep. He's playing the guy that's having to be the ball winner, and he's playing the guy that's having to be the guy that makes the forward runs. So when he's just hit 30, right? So he's 30-year-old now. So obviously he's into the twilight of his career now. He's into the latter years. So how do you get the best out of it? How do you get the best out of that player? Do you play him forward and tell him, listen, you've still got the legs to do all the running about? Or do you say, right, you sit deepest, you watch the game because your reading of the game is absolutely phenomenal. You're probably one of the best players Celtic's had in a long, long time at that in midfield, and your passing ability is second to none. So why don't you just sit a wee bit deeper, dictate the game, and let guys like Hatate do the running because they've got the legs, they've got the engine, they've got the drive.
See,
if Rodgers is going to be playing a back to possession based, you're not going to need that as much though. You know what I mean? But as long as we get that kind of box to box midfielder that he turned Stuart Armstrong into, I would be delighted with that.
But could I not turn that around and say, I would actually probably argue that McGregor is more naturally fit than Hatate. I mean, McGregor's played about fucking 900 games in the last 2 years. He never gets rested.
But that's going to catch up though at some point. Do you know what I mean?
No, 100%. But mate, see when I'm saying, I'm probably wording it right. See when I'm saying I like McGregor, I think he plays his best fit by playing forward. I don't mean I'd play him in behind the striker. I'd keep him in his position. But see, going into like Europe and you get into Europe basically. I don't see him as being the kind of Scott Brown kind of enforcer type, and he's got that about him. He does 100%, but I just don't think he's got it to the same level. He's made a kind of on the ball, threading balls, kind of through, like you said, McGinty, kind of like the Pirlo role essentially. So 100%, I'm not saying he should take O'Reilly's place or anything like that, but as I say, Hatate 100% for the league and things like that. But gearing it more towards Europe, I would be more inclined to maybe push Hatate on one, or even push McGregor on one. More likely Hatate, but then have your big fucking enforcer beside him, like your Wanyama, as we've said to death, to go in and break it up. And then you've essentially got kind of 2 number 10s, a playmaker and a kind of deep line playmaker. That's what I mean. I don't mean that I'd fucking have him in ahead of O'Reilly at number 10 or anything like that.
Well, that's been one of the biggest downfalls in the formation all the years for me. Like, see, when we play one guy up top, I think we're very, very guilty. I know having that player there who makes the supporting runs to back up the striker. We always get left with kind of one guy up front, say, for example, Kyogo up against 2 and 3 defenders and nobody running through the middle and backing them up. We've always got the guys coming wide, supporting with the balls in, or the supporting runs or whatever, but you don't get anybody coming in through the centre. And that's where they got a lot of success out of Stuart Armstrong. I'm just thinking as well, if we have a kind of midfield player who plays the deepest in that midfield 3, it will exclude the need to have ball playing centre backs, because one of Rodgers' biggest problems the last time was allowing Dedrick Boyata to be that guy who was trying to step out of defence and make things happen on the ball, because managers were actually saying, listen, let him do that because he's shite, he can't do it and he makes a cut yet. So see, instead of having your centre backs doing that, let them just get the ball and pass it on and let them be defenders. We don't need to have a John Stones in every fucking single team, some guy that comes out and we've got all these inverted full-backs and turning fucking 2 into 5 and 3 into fucking 4 or whatever. Just let's kind of focus and get the best out of players, and I think that's what it ties in with Rodgers, because he does get the best out of players, certainly kind of straight away. You know what I mean? At least the first season.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that, mate. I'd agree with that 100%.
So we've already spoke about the wingers and that. So up front, McGinty, go for it. Kyogo, who else? That's it, isn't it?
Kyogo, and you're looking at also Maeda and potentially Abada. I can see him maybe going for a new striker. I think a few people made comments on social media and even in the chat just now tonight that Rodgers might actually favour O because of his size, his strength over Kyogo. But it's hard to drop a player like Kyogo, who's top goal scorer and all the rest. He's an absolute phenomenal player. The striker position for me, it's not glaringly needing upgraded on. Kyogo can lead that line. And if he's got the support of fast-thinking players like Jota and Abada on either side, then Kyogo's got plenty of support there, especially with those two in a dynamic midfield three. I think the strikers are fine as they are.
One thing I wanted to bring up, right? So obviously Rodgers came for Leicester, and we all know who the kind of star man was there, and it was Jamie Vardy. So when Leicester went through that period of being the top dogs, winning the league, getting into Europe and that, Vardy's best moments came from when he was playing on the shoulders of the defenders and making the run in behind and finding space. Something that Kyogo is absolutely brilliant at, as we all know. And it's very, very hard to do that in Scotland because of the defences play so compact, part of the bus, whatever you want to call it. But as far as I'm aware, and Corvo might be able to back this up, watching English football, I don't think Rodgers played that way with Vardy. I don't think he played him as that kind of on the shoulder type forward. I know he was getting on a bit in years and that, but I think they tried to get Vardy to play football. And when they done that, it didn't really pay off. He didn't really. He certainly wasn't at the heights where he was when he was just running by players and fucking finding space. So I think I'm kind of thinking that Kyle was maybe possibly going to find it a wee bit hard to adapt straight away to Rodgers' football. Again, it's just a thought. I'm certainly fucking sitting here with all the pearls of wisdom around. I'm just sitting here talking shite. I'm just a fanny for the Gallagher. But it could be one of the things where, again, he needs that Dembele type player. He needs that kind of physical forward to get the hustle and bustle to bring in the wingers into play. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that he just ties him with Kyogo and just lets him play the same game, or do you think he's going to have to make changes here? Because I think we're definitely far too lightweight in terms of up front and the back.
I think he'll stick with Kyogo. He's clearly already kind of split the support, so I think kind of sitting Kyogo on the bench through really no fault his own is 100%. But it's not really going to endear himself anymore. Would he even bother about that? I don't know, but I think we'll sign a striker. I'd like us to sign a striker. Not even to say that Andy needs replaced. I just think you always need three strikers. If one of them gets injured, then you're fucking walking in eggshells. And we've seen it in the past with like Kyogo against Real Betis. Pointless game, comes on, gets injured. So I think you need three. So I'd sign a striker regardless.
So I know what you were saying, McGinty, right? About having Abada, Abada, Maeda kind of being the backup forwards. And I think in Andy's formation, like an out striker wasn't utilised, i.e. Giacomakis, and I think he was more than happy to go with having goals coming through all the pitch, having like a million wee buzz bombs all running about and getting a goal for somewhere. But I think I personally think that Rodgers he'll be wanting that focal figure, that guy who can be the lone striker, who can take on a man, can take on defenders, can overpower them. What do you think, mate? I don't want to say Kyogo's going to get dropped or he's going to get sold or this and that, because he's come off the back of another 30-plus goal scoring season. Do you know what I mean? He's the main man. But do you think Rodgers is going to take him the same way that Ange did? Do you think that his possession-based football is going to get the best out of Kyogo? Because, again, he's a player that plays with the speed, he plays with the energy, plays on the shoulder, he plays with making the kind of runs that bamboozle defenders. They don't know where he is.
I think I think he'll love Kyogo. I think Kyogo will enjoy playing in this formation as well. It's not a million miles away from what we've been playing the last 2 seasons, to be honest with me. The difference is the number 10 becomes more prominent and the fullbacks go back out wide properly. Kyogo will work absolutely fine in a Rodgers setup if he has the proper support from the midfield and out wide. Jota and Abada clearly support Kyogo superbly. They always have. If the number 10, whoever it is, if it's a rejuvenated O'Reilly or a marquee number 10 that comes in, they need to play as that secondary striker. They need to be the ones who allows the switch between the striker and the midfielder so that they can kind of drop deep and make the runs off each other and whatnot. I don't know if O'Reilly's definitely that man to do it. He could be. I don't know if it's somebody else that comes in and does it for them. But it's the support for the striker, regardless of who it is. There's no point we could play this tiniest little speed mention up front. If he's no support, he's not going to get anywhere. We could play the biggest bruiser of a striker. Again, if there's no support, he's not going to get through a bank of 10. It's the support that they need. And yeah, the wingers as they are, especially Jota and Abada, will give Kyogo that spot and he'll be absolutely fine. I see where James is coming from. You want 3. You always want that extra backup. You can always improve. But for me, striker, with those 2 there, it's not our first concern. Defence is, sort the number 10 is, figure out the fullbacks and figure out the goalkeeper situation. That's where, probably in those orders, that's where I want the money spent before we look at the front 3. The front 3.
I think it's still early days yet to be even talking about, kind of players that's been had their name mentioned in the press. I know the boy, what was his name? Odin Tiago or something. I know he's been touted as signed and whatnot. But we'll let that one play out because I don't know what's happening with that. A guy that was mentioned today was Daniel Amati, who you could probably say he's maybe a defensive midfielder type thing, something that I personally want to see. But again, the manager's not even been announced. Well, he's been announced, as signed, but he's not been paraded to the crowds and the masses yet. So I think it's still too early to be saying, right, this player might be coming, that player might be coming. Get the manager in first, let him come and have his say, have his piece. Let him tell us what he's wanting to bring to this team this time round. And that's going to be Friday. If the papers are to be believed. So whether that gets a parade at Celtic Park, I don't know. And to answer the question that was posed for the fella from South Africa earlier on, if Rodgers was to be paraded at Celtic Park again, do you think he would come with a total welcome, or do you think people would still maybe have a wee bit of kind of resentment to him? Some of the tweets that's come out for the North Curve, still reminding us about the fraud banners and whatnot. Or do you think it's time to just forget that and just say, listen, new dawn?
I must admit, yesterday when I seen that, I couldn't really understand it because as I say, I'll never forgive Rodgers for leaving when he did. I can forgive everything else kind of surrounding it through time, which became fairly apparent. Obviously, the problem lied with the board, but it's the same board that these guys protested rightly all through lockdown and things like that. And then obviously Lennon being a yes man. For me, Rodgers coming back in, he's a million miles away from a yes man. I think we're by that stage now anyway. As I say, it's different roles, the same faces, but it does genuinely feel different. For the first time in ages, it feels as if everybody for fucking the support right through the team, the management, boardroom level is all singing off of him, same hymn sheet and all pulling in the same direction. There was a wee bump in the road with Angel even. That was nobody's fault bar Ange himself. Nobody could have predicted it, if you know what I mean, in a sense. But then I thought about it today and they haven't actually said anything. So maybe it is just a wee warning that he basically will need to hit the ground running. Because it won't actually put a statement out or anything like that. And I know there is still some supporters that obviously everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but there'll be some supporters that are happy with it. So I can understand why they've done it, but if it was me personally, I wouldn't have done it.
McGinty?
I think Brendan.
Before we wrap up.
I think Brendan needs to address it in some fashion. I don't think he needs to sit at a press conference and have, fan media or mainstream media posing the same question 5 different ways to try and get a reaction out of him, to try and get him to say, "I'm sorry, I should never have left, I was wrong." He's never going to say that, but he's going to address it. I think he'll address it in some way that, unfortunately, some of us will take it as, hot air nonsense, words mean nothing sort of thing. When this whole, my love has always been for Celtic, I had to challenge myself, blah, 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 I'm back for a new challenge, I'm going to do this, I always love you, and I think a lot of that will be true whenever he says that, which probably will be Friday. But I think he's going to address it in his way that lays down the marker of what was done was done. We're here today, we all love this club, and we're all pushing forward in the same direction. And they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, as James says there. We need to let it go. He's here. There's nothing else we can do about it. Even if you still haven't forgiven him for how he left, as James says as well, the cold day of light and hindsight and the fact that how everything's panned out since he's left, we know that he's not a yes man. He refused to allow the board to fuck him over to the point that he actually fucked the board over at the end of the day. Only coming back as a guy who would have walked into that Leeds job, would have walked into, was it the Brighton job or whatever it is that the other man got there. He would walk into jobs in Spain if he wanted. He wanted to take a year out, and yet here he is, because he's been afforded the challenge and the welcome to come back to Celtic and do what he needs to do, what he wants to do. Let the guy get on with it. He's a talented manager, one of the best managers that we've ever had, most certainly domestically. Europe is unfinished business, and he knows himself. That's where he needs to prove himself. So he's obviously got assurances. He's obviously not a yes man. He's not coming back here and being told, Rodgers, you can have a job here, but you need to do X, Y, Z, and we're giving you nothing in return. He's clearly coming back for the love of the club, the challenge of Europe, and the fact that he's getting given his own assurances, and he's assuring the board in some fashion as well. It's a two-way street with this. This is not a one-way street with this stuff. We need to stop looking back and look forward. Exactly. And forward is in Europe. Rodgers will... Guys, you've heard me say this for years now. If we build a team for Europe, domestic football will take care of itself. Domestic football in Scotland is, for a guy like Rodgers and Celtic, is a doddle if we do it properly. Build the European team, look forward, the rest will take care of itself.
Perfect way to finish it off. Listen, McGinty, do you mind doing the exit stuff? I need to shoot. I need to go and answer the phone, mate. So
yes.
Can I just ask, just before you go, Paddy, just a wee quick question to pick up where we left off last week. What's your favourite cup of soup?
Actually.
Oh, well, you've killed it for me.
Told you, chicken mushrooms.
Fuck that one already.
Right, I'll catch you.
See you after.
All this, Paddy. So, guys, just before we do wrap up and bugger off and leave these for another week, a roundup of Patreon stuff again, if you don't mind. We're still churning out the daily free content. The daily content is either going to be blogs written by primarily by Paddy just now, but James, myself, and Gavin will take a hand in it at some point. We've stopped calling it daily musings because it's a horrible term, but we're giving out a 10-minute kind of what we're thinking, what's the rumours of the days, what's the stories of the day, try and keep the content fresh and kind of active content every day. We're going to build on that, and we're looking at tying in social media platforms into the Patreon, tying in other weekly/bi-weekly long content, be it using kind of interactive content with phone-ins and chat shows kind of thing. And we're going to look at more topical kind of stuff as well. So Patreon is a new platform that we're trying to utilize. It is a monetary thing. It's trying to get a bit of support to help us do what we do, to try and give you more and more content. It's free for just now. Tiers will come involved into it in the near future. But check it out. The link is in the description for you to get an easy click. It's running along at the bottom of the ticker bar just now as well. Check it out. Have a listen. If you got any advice, any feedback on it, by all means, send it our way and we'll take everything on board. But until we get tiers going. It's free. Enjoy it. And while you do, keep checking your notifications on YouTube. Get that like button hit and all the rest of it. And of course, we'll try and be back next Tuesday and any time in between if we can. James, anything else you want to say?
No, that's everything for me, mate. Maybe add a wee pot noodle tier into the Patreon, but that's about it.
Actually, could be one of the basic tiers levels as a pot noodle tier.
That's it, aye.
But I say, guys, it's free content just now, so you've got nothing to lose to check it out. And if you like what you see and you like what we're going to announce coming forward, what we're going to offer you, then we'll make a couple of tier levels. You know, a couple of quid for the basic, a quid more for the second one, sort of thing. It helps us long term, and it helps you get good content. But until then, guys, all the best. Hail, hail.